friends, welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a mid-year book freakout tag, and I have seen for years other booktubers filming mid-year book freakout tags, and I love listening to their favourite reads, their most disappointing reads, and so today I can't wait to share with you all some of the favourite books I've read so far this year, but also some of the ones that were a little bit underwhelming. So I've got my stack of books right in front of me and I can't wait to discuss them with you all. So far this year I've read some incredible books, but I've also read a couple that have really disappointed me, ones that I had really high expectations for and they just didn't quite meet them. My reading taste tends to change quite frequently depending on my mood, and so sometimes I love reading classics, sometimes I love reading contemporary lit fic, and other times I just want to read really cozy fantasy stories, and so this year really reflects that, I think, and I've read a bit of everything, a little bit random. I am someone who tends to read multiple books on the go, and so I think I have about 5 that I'm in the middle of right now, but I believe I finished book 55 last week, and so we're not doing too badly this year. I'm just going to put my tea down now and then we can start with the first question. Question number 1 is the best book that you've read so far this year in 2024, and I've decided to go for Babel by R.F. Kuang. When I was thinking of which book to pick for this question, I had a couple that came to mind, but as I was going through them it just became more and more obvious that Babel was the number 1 pick for me. I picked this book up early in January or February of this year, and I did it part audiobook, part reading it physically, which was such a great experience because the audiobook narrator was just fantastic. This book is set in 1836 at Oxford University, and we follow a boy called Robin from Canton. Robin's been born and raised in Canton all his life until one day he comes across a man called Professor Lovell. Professor Lovell is from England and ends up taking Robin back with him to the UK and essentially trains Robin in Latin and ancient Greek and other languages in order that he might be able to enter Oxford University, but specifically the prestigious Tower of Babel at Oxford University. So this book plays on the idea of Babel being the epicenter of knowledge and languages, and how language and knowledge equate to power. But more importantly, this book gives a really deep dive into the duplicitous nature of colonialism and imperialism, really awful ways in which the empire viewed and their attitude towards the countries that have been colonized by them. The research that went behind this book must have been insane, and I think R.F. Kuang just really did an incredible job of meshing history with fantasy. I think I really associate this book with the rainier, colder weather, perhaps because I read it in January, but also because it's just quite dark and it's very moody. It has that very moody university atmosphere to it, and it was just perfect to read in winter. Of course, the book's characters are also incredibly well crafted and thought through. I loved Robin so much, and his cast of friends, Rami, they were all so sweet for its depth in world building and characterization, but also the epic world that's being crafted by R.F. Kuang so beautifully. For all of those reasons, I think this is definitely one of my favourite reads of this year so far. Question number 2 is best sequel you've read so far this year, and it has to be Kawasari Tales Told at Night by Shion Miura, I think. This book is actually one of the only sequels that I've read this year, and so it wasn't too hard to pick it. but I did really enjoy it. This book follows on from the first one, which was The Easy Life in Kamosari, and I think it takes place about a year after, or at least Yuki, our main character, has been living at Kamosari village for a year now when this book begins. The first book follows Yuki, who finishes high school and enrolls into this new forestry trial program in the middle of a very remote Japanese forest. Book 1 follows him as he's settling in and all the ways in which he's getting used to the villagers and their charm. And the second book, we get to see more of the character interactions, and we got to see a little bit more depth behind the different characters and their backstories. And for that reason, I actually enjoyed this book even more than the first one. It has a little bit of romance, although I wouldn't say that's its strong point. This book really, I enjoyed it more for its charming villagers and just how funny it is. There were so many times where it made me laugh out loud, and I just loved how quirky all the villagers were, especially Yuki. Yuki is my favourite character. He's just ridiculous and it's hilarious to read about. It's actually a magical realism novel, and so it touches upon Japanese folklore, and specifically folklore in Kamosari village and their mountain gods and goddesses. All around, it's a very light-hearted read, but it also made me quite emotional in many places, especially when we got to hear Yuki's backstory. So yes, I really enjoyed this book. The third question is a new release that I haven't read yet but really want to, and I have two for this question. I've got The Hedge Witch of Foxhall and also The Tempest of Tea. I actually started reading both via Libby, but my holds on them expire before I could finish them, and so I haven't managed to read it properly yet, and I didn't really make too much progress in either one of them. But as soon as I heard about the concepts of each book, I knew that I wanted to read this and put it on my TBR for 2024. The covers for both of these books are absolutely gorgeous and just make me want to read it all the more, especially The Hedge Witch of Foxhall. That is such a gorgeous autumnal cover. I don't know too much about either of these books, but The Hedge Witch of Foxhall, I believe, takes place in a magical fantasy version of Wales, or is inspired by Welsh mythology. From the little that I did manage to read from The Hedge Witch of Foxhall, I believe it follows a hedge witch called Fion, who ends up having to use her hedge witch powers in order to be able to help heal the land of Wales. It featured a lot of like nature fantasy, which I really enjoyed. Along the way, she ends up meeting two princes who are brothers, and I believe there might be like a love triangle situation going on. It is a fantasy standalone romance novel, and so I was actually really excited that it was a standalone, because I feel like you don't get to see too many standalone fantasy romance series. So yes, the vibes were immaculate from the first few pages that I read, and I would love to get to reading this before the end of this year. The second one was The Tempest of Tea, and I made a little bit of progress in this book before I decided to put it down and to save it for autumn, because I felt like in terms of the mood and the atmosphere, it kind of felt more appropriate for autumn, although I might be wrong. I remember loving how atmospheric it was and how almost dark it was. It was a little bit different from what I was expecting actually, and a lot more fast paced than I thought it would be, but I was really enjoying my time, and so I can't wait to pick it back up again. I think somehow vampires are involved, and it's a prestigious tea room that's converted into like an illegal blood house as well, so it sounds really intriguing and something that I just think I'll devour in the colder months as well. Question 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and now I had so many on this list, but I've narrowed it down to 3. The first one is The Spell Shop, which is a cottagecore fantasy that I mentioned in my last video. The second one is Silverborn, which I am so excited for. If you're also a Nevermore fan, then you probably have been waiting with me for Silverborn to be released. I believe it was initially supposed to be released in 2022, but then it's been delayed twice, so it's coming out hopefully September of this year. I really want to refresh my memory on the entire series and read the other books and then be really ready for book 4 to come out. Nevermore is a middle grade series that follows a girl called Morrigan, and one day Morrigan is invited by a man called Jupiter North to join the Wanderers Society. And basically, in Nevermore, each child who is a part of the Wanderers Society has access to a wondrous gift. One follows her undertaking all these different trials and exams to pass and get into the Wanderers Society. And you see from the following books her and her friendships developing and blossoming. You also see her developing her magical gifts as well, and the world building is just fantastic. But then I also have the Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, and I feel like I haven't heard anybody really talking about this series, or I haven't seen anyone mention it. I believe it follows rival ornithologists as they hunt across for a very, very rare magical species of bird. There's supposed to be academic rivalry between Beth and Devon, but also they end up having to join up and be a pair in order to enter the competition called Birder of the Year, or to win the title Birder of the Year. It feels very reminiscent of Emily Wild's Encyclopedia of Fairies, but also a far wilder magic, and I loved both so much. I just love books with academic rivals in it and rivalry, but also the trope of like being forced into a competition or to work together. It's just so good. On Goodreads it says that it's supposed to be like Indiana Jones meets tea and parasols, and so I think it's going to be quite quirky, but I am very excited for it nonetheless. Hey friends, it's voiceover Ahya over here, and I'm really happy to share with you all today's sponsor, Moft. Moft specialise in creating origami-inspired gear that allows you to document footage wherever you are, and they were so kind to send me their invisible snap phone tripod stand, as well as their snap float folio and case set to test and try out. Some of you may know and some of you may not know, but I film all my videos using my phone. When I'm at home, I've been using my tripod to film everything, but if you're anything like me, the sound of bringing your bulky tripod outside in public is quite scary, and so the fact that now I can use a streamlined and lightweight phone tripod when I'm filming in cafes and walking around bookshops instead lifts so much weight off of my shoulders. The snap phone tripod is perfect for filming studio vlogs or documenting processes. I'm aware that some of you have your own channels or art and book accounts on Instagram, so if you film reels or vlogs frequently, this origami inspired tripod might be a really handy tool to look into. I should also mention that the colour that I got is called Misty Cove, and it's a gorgeous soft white and light grey kind of colour. I also received the Snap Float folio and case set like I mentioned, which fits my little iPad Air perfectly. I use this iPad Air every single day to read ebooks and watch YouTube videos, and because my previous iPad case was scratched and had yellowed rather badly, I thought it was about time that I switched up the case, and I couldn't be happier with this one from Moft. I received the colour brown. There are multiple ways in which you can fold the case so that you can achieve different heights. I'm so happy with both the tripod and the folio case, and so if you'd like to check them out, I'll leave a link in the description box below. Thank you again so much to Moft for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back to the mid-year book freakout tag. Question number 5 was the biggest disappointment of this year, and I'm honestly really sad that that I picked this book out, but it's Hakume and Mikochi, and I'm so sad that this is my biggest disappointment. I must have mentioned this book or this manga volume quite a few times across the last few videos of mine, and in each video I think I talk about how excited I am to pick it up or how it was on my spring TBR, but I just was really underwhelmed by this book. So it's a cozy slice of life manga series following Hakume and Mikochi, who are like tiny woodland forest sprites, and it just follows them in their life in the woods. and it's supposed to be really sweet and cozy and heartwarming. I think I was hoping to end up loving Hakumi and Mikochi as characters more, but I felt like we didn't really get to see, well, I didn't end up feeling any attachment towards them. And whilst the art in this book is gorgeous, I just feel like it wasn't enough for me to justify the lack of storyline. And I know that's the whole point of this. It's a slice of life. Each chapter follows a completely different chapter in their lives, but it all felt a little bit dissonant to me, and I just couldn't relate or fall in love with any of the characters mentioned in it, which was really disappointing. But yeah, look how cute this is. Like, I should have loved it. I feel like I should have loved it. I love cozy books, but I think I'm the kind of person where something needs to be happening. It can't just be all coziness and nothing, no plot is driving it at all. And I also am somebody who needs to end up loving the characters in order to love a series or a book. And so the fact that both were missing in this manga volume just, I think, made it a little bit of a, I don't want to say boring. I think I was just very underwhelmed is the word. Yes, I was just very underwhelmed as I was reading it. That being said, I know that a lot of you love this series and were hoping that I would love it too. So I'm sorry I didn't love it as much as you guys, but maybe it gets really, really good as you become more attached and familiar with the characters as you follow the series, but I don't think I'll be carrying on with this particular volume or manga series. The next question is the biggest surprise of the year, and for me it's Garlic and the Vampire. I picked this graphic novel up from a children's bookshop in Richmond called the Alligator's Mouth Bookshop, which is very, very sweet and charming, and I did not expect to fall in love with this graphic novel as much as I did. I think it's actually one of my favourite graphic novels ever. I adore graphic novels, but the one thing that I do struggle with it sometimes is that I struggle to really feel attached to the characters or the storyline of a graphic novel, just because I think you have less space to develop an entire story. But this particular book follows a little Garlic. This book follows our main character Garlic, who is very, very anxious and gets easily worried and is very, very timid. But one day, when there are rumours that a bloodthirsty vampire has moved into the castle that is very nearby to the town in which Garlic lives in, all the other vegetables say that it only makes sense that Garlic go and confront him. And so she ends up very unwillingly being forced to go confront this vampire. And I never thought that I could relate to a Garlic so much. I really, really felt a lot for Garlic and the ways in which she has to overcome her anxiety and her fears and her doubts is really, really heartwarming. And the art in this is actually stunning. It's so perfect for autumn. Maybe if you're in the southern hemisphere, you can pick this book up because it's a perfect read for autumn. But also, it's just a lovely read to pick up all year round. And I'll definitely be picking up book 2, which is called Garlic and the Witch, I believe. Question number 7 is your favourite new author, and it could be new to you or just a debut author. And I really, really had to think quite hard about this question because I wasn't sure I found a new author. Last year, I fell in love with Rebecca Ross's works, and she's just one of my favourite fantasy writers of all time now. I'll 100% be picking up everything that she releases, but I couldn't really think of a particular author that stood out to me this year as much. And then I realised, but of course I've read R.F. Kuang's novel Babel, and she was fantastic, and I love the intricacies and the intelligence that her book, or Babel at least, really just show through. I just feel like from reading Babel you can just tell how intelligent R.F. Kuang is, and I was enamored by the writing quality, which was out of this world, the fantasy world building, the character depths as well. So R.F. Kuang, I think, is definitely my favorite new author. Even though I've only read Babel, I haven't read any of her other works. Question number 8 is your favorite new character or fictional crush. As I was talking about Garlic and the Vampire, I realized that Garlic could be one of my new favorite characters from this year. But the very first character that popped into my mind when I thought about this question was Keith from Keeper of the Lost Cities. In last week's video, I talked about how much I adored Keith and Sophie and this series in general that I've fallen in love with. I didn't expect to fall in love with another middle grade series after reading Nevermore, and so I'm so happy to have fallen in love with this entire universe that Shannon Messenger has created. Keith is actually just one of those characters I just fell in love with from the very beginning. He was so sweet and funny. He's hilarious. He's honestly my favorite character from the whole series. His humor always got me laughing, and the way he's so lovely and endearing and always takes care of Sophie as well just warms my heart to think about it. There is so much depth behind Keith as a character, I feel like, and just the way he uses humor as his defense mechanism is really heartbreaking to read about, especially as the series progresses. He's one of my all-time favorite characters now, so this was a no-brainer when I thought about this question. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. I have a little tag on Notion where I can see which books that have made me cry because I always mark it down, but this book I didn't even need to remember because it made me weep, and it's actually Babel again. This book also made me really delusional. It made me think that I really wanted to be a translator, and it really sold the idea of like the art behind translation and how incredible translators are. But yes, I do not have the talents or the skills or the patience to be a translator, so we'll just live vicariously through these characters in this novel. There's this one particular scene where I was sobbing my eyes out. It was an ugly weeping, and I felt so emotionally affected by the things that they go through in this book that I really couldn't function afterwards, and I don't think I did anything for like the next day and a half. I just couldn't do anything but think about this book and the characters and the things that they endured. And so yes, this book made me ugly cry, it made me weep and sob, and I get really sad thinking about everything that Robin goes through. On the other hand, we have next question, which is a book that just made you feel happy, and I picked Yours from the Tower by Sally Nichols. Good light-hearted romance novel, never fails to brighten my mood, and so this one's really special because it follows 3 girls who have just left boarding school. They're 3 friends, and they're writing letters to each other to keep up with what each other is doing, to maintain their friendship from long and far distances all across the UK. I particularly love that letters give that extra personal touch to a novel. I feel like it really helps you to dive into like the first person viewpoint of the character themselves, and it helps you to really sort of as if you're reading over their shoulders, or you're understanding a little bit better of like their internal thought processes as they're writing the letters down. And so it's so charming. I fell in love with one of the characters here called Terza because she is so funny and overly dramatic, and it made me laugh out loud so many times. It also follows them as they try to figure out their love lives, and it's just so funny. We get to see not just their 3 different perspectives, but also letters written from brothers, from friends, from grandmothers even, I think. And so it's just so charming. I absolutely loved my experience with it. It's just lovely. The penultimate question is the most beautiful book that you bought or received this year. I actually thought that Yours from the Tower was one of the most beautiful books that I bought this year, But yesterday I actually picked up More Days at the Ahya bookshop. Sorry guys, my storage ran out halfway through filming, but I think I was in the middle of saying that I picked up yesterday More Days at the Ahya bookshop. And this is, yes, a different aesthetic to the other book, Yours from the Tower. So this is the inside depiction of the bookshop, and I think it's so gorgeous. And what's really cool is that this particular edition or copy of the book is signed by Satoshi Agisawa, and let me try and find it. It's a limited signed edition, and I think that detail is adorable with cat as well, and the stamps. There's just something so special about it, and I'm so happy to have it be a part of my collection now. I think this is just a continuation of the first book, and the first book followed a woman who was really burnt out and tired, and she didn't really know what to do with her life anymore, and so she ends up staying with her uncle, who runs a bookshop in the middle of Tokyo, or I don't know if it's the middle of Tokyo, but in Tokyo, in a neighborhood called Jinbocho, which is a book town actually in Tokyo. As time passes, you see her find purpose in life again through the help of books, and you see her affinity and love for books begin to grow and develop as she spends more and more time in the bookshop and meets its customers. So I am very thrilled to have picked up the sequel to the first book. Last but not least, we have books that you need to get to before the end of this year. Number one on my priority list, I think, is The Count of Monte Cristo. I actually started reading The Count of Monte Cristo early in January, and it was one of the classics that I was determined to power through this year, because I know so many people who absolutely love this book, and it's one of their favorite classics ever. I made it to about like the 90-page mark area, as you can see by the little ribbon. I didn't get very far into this book, but even from the 90 pages that I did manage to read, I knew that this was going to be an epic classic and that it was going to be incredible. I actually felt like it flew by really quickly to reach the 90-page mark, and so I really should have just carried on, but I think because it's so heavy, I just wasn't finding myself gravitating towards it when I was in bed reading at night. I was just picking up like lighter paperbacks instead. So this is a number one classic that I want to finish before the end of 2024. And then I also have Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and I haven't read Wuthering Heights before. I never read it for school or anything, and because I started reading her collection of poetry this year and I fell in love with the way that she wrote, I would love to pick up Wuthering Heights as well before the end of this year. I'm saving it for the colder months because I feel like it's a very moody read, hopefully perfect for autumn and winter. That's the end of the mid-year book freakout tag, and I had so much fun going through all the different questions and seeing which books really stood out to me this year and which ones were slightly underwhelming. Please let me know in the comments below your favourite book of the year if you can choose one, and then also your most disappointing read of 2024 so far. I hope you enjoyed watching today's video though, and I'm so grateful for all the lovely comments and encouragements that you've been sending me in the last couple of videos, so thank you all so much, friends. Bye friends!